Hey guys, Gaston with Rough Country. Today we're going to be installing our e-board power running boards on this 2024 Chevy Silverado. Let's inventory what comes in the kit. First up, we've got our fully integrated plug-and-play harness with each plug clearly marked. We've got our on and off or valet switch that allows you to dictate whether or not the steps operate. We've got extra fuses for the harness, plenty of cable ties for the install, our magnetic door triggers, our integrated LED lighting, our control unit with bracket and mounting hardware, and we've got our 4 individual motors, each one capable of holding, not lifting, but holding 330 pounds, which gives you 660 pounds per side, and plenty of confidence that if you and someone else are stepping on that board at the same time, there's no problem. Next, we've got our mounting hardware. The smaller Allen bolts are going to be for mounting the board to the motor, the larger for mounting the motor to the chassis. And to the untrained eye, this may look like a washer, but these are in fact shims, and you're probably not going to need them, but due to the variances in manufacturing, we've sent those along so you can dial in the position of each motor to make sure everything clears. And last but not least is our step. Extruded aluminum, corrugated top for a non-slip surface, durable powder coat, heavy duty and lightweight, exactly what you want. But enough talking, let's get these things installed. We'll get the truck up in the air and mount the motors. All right, first off, we're gonna mount our motors. Each one is clearly marked. This one says front right. Let's get it mounted. If your truck came with factory steps, you'll obviously need to remove those first. This truck did not, so we don't have to worry about that. Factory step, I believe, mounts in 4 different locations, so just be aware of that. You're gonna wanna mount each motor as far forward and as far back as you can on each side. We're gonna get this back one installed. We're just gonna get these finger tight, leave the whole thing loose until after we mount the running board on both sides. Once we cinch those down, we'll come around, check for clearance, and tighten everything down. Now the driver's side motors mount exactly the same. I'm gonna go over there, get those installed, then we'll come back over here and mount our control board. All right, now we've got our control module, and its bracket is designed to mount in the middle factory step location. Now we can go ahead and tighten these down. We don't have to just run them finger tight. So I will get those started, and then we will snug them down. All right, let's get that wiring harness. All right, now we're gonna take the harness. I realize it's a large harness. It can be a little intimidating, but don't let it. We're gonna lay it out. That way we see where everything goes, and then we will put it in its place. With the harness laid out, we can see that we have got our main connectors that go to our controller. From there, it branches off to each motor and light on the passenger side. Then we've got a set of wires that comes up. Those are gonna be the 3 wires that go into the cab. And we've got 2 wires that go forward. Those are gonna attach to our battery up front. And finally, we've got our motors and lights for the driver's side. It's actually pretty simple. Everything plugs in and is either labeled or color coded, so it's fairly foolproof. Go ahead and make these initial connections. I'm gonna go red to red and black to black. Now let's route our right side motor and light over the frame and into location. I'll go ahead and plug this motor in. All right, I'm gonna leave this hanging for now. We'll come back, zip tie it up to the factory harness, get it tucked up and looking nice. All right, now we're gonna run our harness over to the driver's side. We're gonna come over the frame and follow this factory harness. This portion of our harness has a silicone covering to protect it against heat. So we'll follow this factory harness across this cross member, up and over the frame, then we'll drop down and connect to each motor. And we'll route this one back to the rear. plug it in. Now we will route our battery connections to the front, running along the frame and up into the engine compartment. I'm going to follow this factory harness all the way up into the engine compartment. With the truck still in the air and before I finalize the routing of the harness and cable tie it into place, we're going to go ahead and install our lighting. Now I'm going to aim for the middle of each door, so it's going to look something like this. For a cleaner installation, you could drill through the pinch weld and put a grommet in place, but I know for some people drilling into a brand new truck is not something you want to do, so I'm going to show you how to do it this way. Clean our spot really good to make sure that it sticks. Move our backing just like that. We'll do that on each position. Then we will tie into the harness, simply plugging it in. You can start cinching everything up with wire ties. We've got our harness routed as much as we can with the truck on the lift. Now I'm going to go around and cable tie our harness to the existing truck harness, make sure everything's up and out of the way, away from heat and moving parts. After that, we'll drop the truck down, finish routing the harness into the engine compartment, and begin routing it into the cab. And to do that, we're going to pop through this grommet in the floorboard. So we're just going around and securing our wiring harness to the factory harness wherever we can, or we're running a zip tie through a factory hole and making sure that the harness is secure up and out of the way and nice and neat. We've got one of our lighting wires that I want to tie up and out of the way using these existing holes on this body mount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tie and put a couple of bends in it. That way I can fish it up into the first hole and down through the second hole easier. All right, so for our power leads going to our battery, I've come along the factory harness here behind the splash shield. And I'm coming up into the engine compartment and I'm tying it to the factory harness along the way. We'll pop out near the battery. We'll follow the harness along all the way up into the engine compartment to the battery, where we'll make our connections once we're finalized with the install. Now, regardless of what model truck you're installing the e-boards on, installation is going to be pretty much the same, with the exception of how the motors actually mount to the truck and which side your control unit goes on. We're going to put the control unit on the same side of the truck that the battery is on, just to make routing the harness to the battery that much easier. Okay, now we're going to remove some interior panels, pull the carpet back to expose that plug. Then we will drill a small hole in the plug and pull our harness through. I've got a 7/16 drill bit, and I have marked with painter's tape because we just need to pierce this plug, and we want to make sure we don't go in too far. There is a factory wiring harness fairly close, so I want to make sure that I avoid that at all costs. All right, now I'm gonna route my wires. We've got our harness routed into the cab. I've got the loom pulled up through the plug, sealing it. And now let's show you what we're working with here. Our brown wire, the shortest, is going to be our passenger side trigger. It'll get routed over here by the B-pillar. Our white wire, which is the longest, is going to be our driver side trigger. And our black wire with the 2-prong plug is going to be our on-off valet switch. These two have to be routed over to the driver side. We'll go under the carpet, around the console, and out the other side. Now you can feed this through by hand to a friend on the other side and have them grab it and pull it across. You can stretch out a metal coat hanger, run it through from that side and fish these wires over. You can use an electrical fish tape, or I've got some fiberglass rods specifically for the purpose. I'm going to run those through from the driver's side, attach it to the wires, and pull it across. Look at that. We've got our wires fished over to the driver's side. I'm gonna go ahead and install our on-off valet switch. I think I'm gonna tuck it up in here where it is out of the way but easily accessible to the driver. I'm gonna take some alcohol, clean the panel, and go ahead and attach the switch. Now we'll go ahead and plug the switch in. I'm gonna bundle up these wires nice and neat. We'll tie them up and tuck them under the dash. Okay, next we're gonna remove some interior panels and get the driver's side signal wire routed under the carpet to this B-pillar. Okay, now in anticipation to install our door triggers, we need to remove our sill plates and pop our B-pillar covers off on both sides. Now we're ready to mount our triggers. So we're gonna pull the weather strip back, feed the back one through. The back one is gonna be the one that has the ground spade on it. The front is gonna have a barrel connection so it can reach our trigger wire. There are several ways to line up the triggers with the magnets. You can measure from a known point on the door and the jamb, or you can mount your trigger, close the door from the inside, mark your door, open it up, and put your magnet on based on that. Or I'm gonna show you a trick. All right, so I've got our trigger. Just so both sides are the symmetrical, I went in, I measured from the center point of this bolt 3 inches up. I'll do the same on the other side. It'll just be more pleasing to the eye if they match. I'm gonna pull the backing off of the 3M and attach our trigger at that point on the jamb. I'm gonna run my wire around and resecure my weather stripping. Now, you can do this with tape and a piece of cardboard. I happen to have some foam weather stripping. I'm gonna apply that to the trigger. Maybe, there we go. Just like that. Then I'm gonna take a paint pen and mark the center of that trigger point liberally with plenty of paint. I'm gonna close the door and this mark will transfer onto the door itself. All right, and there's our mark, so we know exactly where to put our magnet. We'll do that on each door, and that will line up our magnets perfectly. Just in case they aren't lining up 100%, I'm gonna pull back just a portion of this backing and get this magnet stuck on. Then, once I verify that it is triggering properly, I'll peel the rest off and fully install the magnet. While I'm back here, I'm gonna go ahead and ground the trigger on this side. I like to create my own ground for these and not share a body ground with anything from the factory. Newer trucks are so electrically complicated that this just takes that out of the equation to where I know it's got a good ground and I know it's not going to interfere with anything else. Now we're going to install the trigger on the front doors of the passenger side. Again, we'll pull the weather stripping back. Feed the trigger through. On this one, I'm going to line it up with a striker on the center. Now I will put our wires in place here and reinstall our weather strip. All right, now we can tuck all our wires in and reinstall our interior pieces. Then we will install our magnet on our door. Hey. All right, I've connected the battery just to test the magnet triggers. So let's see how we did. Excellent. All right, now I'm gonna unhook the battery, repeat the process on the driver's side, get our triggers and magnets lined up and connected, and our interior back together. Then we'll be ready to install our boards. Here's another tip for you. If you've gotten this far and you've connected temporary power and for some reason your triggers just aren't working, if you wanna make sure that the wiring harness and everything is hooked up correctly and it's probably just your magnet alignment, take a regular magnet, this one happens to be on this light, and just touch the trigger. That's going to show you that the rest of the system is functioning properly, and you need to readjust your magnet. Now you'll need to make sure you have one of the doors closed. You only want to do this one at a time because the circuit's going to be broken if the door is open. But a simple magnet, you don't even have to actually touch it. Just get close enough to it and it's going to trigger it. That lets us know if there's an issue with them coming down. It's more than likely going to be the placement of our magnet on the door. All right, with the interior button back up, now it's time to go ahead and mount our boards. We'll mount them, make sure that they're moving up and down correctly without any kind of binding. Then we'll tighten down the motors, do another check all the way around just to make sure all the wiring harness is zip tied where it needs to be, and finalize the entire installation by permanently attaching the power. We are ready to install our running boards onto the motors themselves. And to do that, we're gonna take our aluminum sliders that run down this channel here. They're gonna fit perfectly into the block hasp on each bracket. We'll set the board in place, make sure it's even front to back, and then cinch them down with our Allen bolts. All right, we've got the boards installed and where we want them. Now the motors are still loose on the body. I'm gonna hook up power, bring the boards up, make sure everything's clearing good, and then we will tighten down the motors. If you find that you do need to add a shim to the bottom bolt to make the board level with the rocker, rather than unbolting the motor, here's a quick way you can slide the shim in place and move along. You'll take your shim, one of the ends of the wire ties that you cut off, and a little piece of tape. Just tape the shim to the wire tie, then you can slide it into place, tighten the bolt down, give it a tug, and the shim will stay where you need it. And that concludes the installation of Rough Country's e-boards on our 2024 Chevy Silverado. Nice. Installation on other trucks is going to be very similar, and this is something you definitely can do at home. If you have any questions, our helpline is just a call away, but if you don't have the confidence to do it yourself, we've got a network of dealers across the country that are ready to help you out. Hope this video helped you guys out on your e-board installation. Get yours today at roughcountry.com.